The hum of the Wander's engines filled the cabin as Drin hunched over Bolt's cylindrical frame, wielding a plasma torch with the finesse of a novice. Sparks flew in erratic bursts, lighting up the cluttered workstation strewn with tools, wires, and scraps of plating. Bolt, for its part, chirped nervously. "Hold still, will you?" Drin muttered, squinting as he tried to reattach a loose panel on the drone's side. "You're the one who wanted fixing. Or would you prefer to wobble around with half a leg for the rest of your days?" Bolt's optics flickered in what might have been indignation. Repair status critical. Technique suboptimal. Drin straightened, placing a clawed hand on his hip as he glared at the drone. "Suboptimal? I saved your tin can from a self-destructing ship. You're lucky you're getting a tune-up at all." From the overhead speakers, Serapha's voice cut through, dripping with its usual sarcasm. "You'll have to forgive him, Bolt. Drin's expertise lies more in breaking things than fixing them." "Funny," Drin shot back, picking up a spanner. "You weren't complaining when I patched this ship together with duct tape and prayers after our last job." The AI let out a dry hum. "Yes, and I'm sure it'll hold up wonderfully during atmospheric entry. Nothing says structural integrity like adhesive strips." Drin grumbled under his breath and bent back to his work, muttering something about ungrateful AI companions. Bolt, sensing the tension, emitted a cautious beep. "New captain," Bolt ventured, its voice warbling. "Structural stability of this unit acceptable. Functionality restored?" "Almost," Drin said, tightening the last bolt with a sharp twist. "There. Good as new. Well, as new as you're going to get." He stepped back and surveyed the patched-up drone. One of its arms still dangled slightly out of alignment, but at least it wasn't sparking anymore. Bolt wobbled experimentally, then chirped with satisfaction. "Systems operational." Gratitude extended. Drin grinned and tapped the drone's metallic dome. "That's more like it. Now let's see what shiny secrets your precious humans left us." He turned toward the central console, where the data core sat in a secure casing, its faint blue light casting eerie shadows on the walls. Serapha's holographic form flickered to life above the console, its sleek, abstract design as impassive as ever. "I've made progress deciphering the data core," Seraph announced, ignoring Drin's dramatic flourish as he gestured toward the console. "Though I must say, Terran encryption is unnecessarily convoluted. It's as if they were actively trying to frustrate anyone who came after them." "Probably were," Drin said, leaning over the console. "What have you got?" The hologram shifted, projecting a series of fragmented star maps. Glyphs and coordinates scrolled across the display, their meaning just out of reach. "Preliminary analysis suggests this is a map," Seraph said dryly. "Though I'm sure you deduced that with your unparalleled intellect." Drin ignored the jab, his antennae twitching with excitement. "This looks like a hidden system, way out in the middle of nowhere." "Indeed," Seraph confirmed. "The coordinates place it on the fringes of known space, but the system's current location has shifted over millennia due to galactic drift." "I'll need to recalculate." Bolt chirped again, its optics glowing brighter. "Human's location? Isolatus Prime, probability high." Drin frowned. "Isolatus Prime? What's that?" Seraph hesitated, a rare moment of silence from the AI. "It's a designation within the data core. Translated loosely, it means the isolated prime, a fitting name for a system designed to be hidden." The cabin grew quiet, the weight of the revelation settling over them. Drin leaned closer to the console, his excitement tempered by a flicker of unease. "And we're sure this isn't just some dead end?" "Only one way to find out," Seraph replied, the hologram collapsing into a stream of numbers. "I'll calculate the coordinates. Prepare the ship for a long jump." Drin stood straight, rolling his shoulders. "All right, Bolt, get yourself settled. Seraph, work your magic. If this system holds even a fraction of what it promises, it'll make the Eternal Resolve look like a warm-up act." As the ship's hum deepened in preparation for the jump, Drin allowed himself a moment to dream. treasure, answers, fame. Everything he'd ever wanted might lie within their grasp, if they could survive getting there. The Wanderer drifted through the endless void, its engines humming softly as it pushed toward the edges of known space. The cabin lights flickered with their usual erratic rhythm, a reflection of Drin-esque patchwork repairs. Drin himself sat slouched in the captain's chair, one leg hooked over an armrest as he idly flipped a coin-like Terran trinket between his claws. "Still calculating, Seraph?" he asked, his voice tinged with impatience. The AI's holographic form shimmered to life on the main console, its abstract design radiating faint irritation. "Unless you've discovered a way to bypass the complexities of galactic drift and time dilation. Yes, I'm still calculating." Drin groaned, tossing the coin into the air and catching it with a lazy swipe. "You've got all the computing power in the galaxy, and you're telling me it takes this long to plot a course?" "Yes," Seraph replied flatly. "Unlike your seat-of-the-pants approach to navigation, I prioritize precision. Would you prefer we emerge from hyperspace inside a star?" "Don't tempt me," Drin muttered. Bolt chirped from across the cabin, where it was carefully organizing tools Drin had abandoned mid-repair. "Precision critical. Star collision non-optimal." Drin snorted. "Thanks, Bolt. Always good to have a second opinion." As if in defiance of Drin-esque skepticism, Seraph's projection flickered and displayed the final coordinates. A glowing map hovered in the air, highlighting a distant system far beyond the usual trade routes. "There," Seraph announced, its tone smug. "Isolatus Prime, an isolated star system orbiting an uncharted tundra world. Congratulations, Drin. You've officially reached the middle of nowhere." Drin leaned forward, his antennae twitching with curiosity. "That's it? Doesn't look like much." "It rarely does," Seraph replied. "The system's orbital data suggest the presence of an artificial satellite, likely Terran in origin. I trust that piques your interest." He smirked, already punching in the jump coordinates. "Oh, you know me. Anything old, dangerous, and shiny is right up my alley. Let's get moving." The Wanderer shuddered as its engines roared to life, and the viewport filled with the swirling blues and blacks of hyperspace. For a moment, the cabin was silent, save for the soft hum of machinery. As the jump progressed, Drin wandered over to where Bolt was methodically aligning a row of spanners. "So, Bolt," he began, leaning casually against the wall, "ever been to the middle of nowhere before?" The drone paused, its optics flickering. "No data on middle of nowhere. Assumed location. Everywhere but here." Drin barked a laugh, clapping the drone's dome. "Well, you're in for a treat. I hear the scenery's top-notch. Ice, ice, and more ice." Bolt tilted slightly, processing. "Ice, hazardous to systems. Malfunction, likely." "Relax," Drin said, shaking his head. "We'll bundle you up nice and warm." The ship dropped out of hyperspace with a jolt, the viewport flooding with the pale glow of a distant sun. Ahead, a planet emerged, its surface veiled in a thick shroud of icy clouds. Orbiting the planet was a small, angular moon that seemed too perfect in its symmetry. "Seraph," Drin said, his voice quieter now, "tell me that's natural." "It's not," the AI replied. "Energy readings confirm artificial construction. The satellite appears dormant, though it is emitting faint residual signals." Drin-esque eyes narrowed as he studied the moon. Its surface was a patchwork of metallic panels, dotted with what looked like ancient weapon emplacements. "Dormant, huh? I'll take your word for it." The Wanderer drew closer, and the planet's details came into view. Vast tundra plains stretched across its surface, broken only by jagged mountain ranges and frozen seas. Drin tapped his claws against the console, a faint unease creeping into his chest. "Not exactly inviting," he muttered. "Few Terran sites are," Seraph quipped. Bolt, ever the optimist, chirped. "Planetary surface promising. Terran artifacts likely." Drin smirked despite himself. "Yeah, Bolt likely. And probably guarded by a 1,000-year-old death trap. But hey, where's the fun in easy?" As the Wanderer prepared to enter orbit, the artificial moon pulsed faintly, its dormant systems flickering to life. A low, garbled transmission crackled through the comms, the words barely decipherable. Warning, unauthorized approach detected. Drin froze, antennae twitching. Seraph, the AI's voice was clipped. The satellite is awakening. I suggest we prepare for deception or retreat. Retreat? Drin grinned, reaching for the controls. What's the fun in that? The Wanderer inched closer, its engines humming with determination as Drin braced himself for whatever challenge the Terran satellite had in store. The Wanderer hovered in low orbit around the icy planet, its engines humming with a steady rhythm. On the view screen, the artificial moon loomed large, its metallic surface reflecting faint streaks of light from the distant sun. Drin sat rigid in the captain's chair, his claws tapping nervously on the armrest. "Okay, Seraph," he said, his voice low but firm. "What exactly are we dealing with here?" Serapha's holographic form flickered to life, projecting a glowing schematic of the moon. The satellite appears to be a Terran construct. Its design suggests it served as a defensive outpost or monitoring station. Faint energy signatures indicate partial system functionality. Drin squinted at the schematic, his antennae twitching. "Partial functionality? You're saying it's not entirely dead?" "Correct," Seraph replied. "Its systems are dormant but not defunct. Residual power levels suggest it could reactivate under certain conditions, such as an unauthorized approach." As if on cue, the comms crackled to life, a garbled voice cutting through the cabin. "Warning, unauthorized approach detected. State designation." Bolt emitted a nervous chirp, its optics flickering. "New captain, this seems not good." "No kidding, Bolt," Drin muttered, leaning forward. "Seraph, tell me we got something to throw at this thing. A clearance code, a distraction, anything." "Fortunately," Seraph said, its tone dry as ever, "I anticipated your usual lack of preparation. I've generated a falsified Terran clearance signature based on data retrieved from the Eternal Resolve. It's crude, but it may suffice." Drin shot a glance at the overhead speakers. "And you're just now telling me this?" "I wanted to savor the moment," Seraph replied. "Shall I transmit the signal?" "Do it," Drin said quickly, his fingers tightening on the armrests. The cabin grew tense as Seraph activated the falsified signal. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the garbled voice returned, its tone slightly less menacing. "Clearance accepted. Temporary access granted. Proceed with caution." Drin let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "Well, that's a first. Something actually went right." Bolt chirped in agreement. "Deception successful. New captain impressive. Don't encourage him," Seraph said. As the Wanderer drifted closer to the planet, the moon's faint glow began to dim, its systems settling back into dormancy. Drin relaxed slightly, though the unease in his chest remained. "Seraph," he said, his voice softer now, "what's the chance that thing's going to wake up again?" "Unknown," the AI admitted. "Its systems are unpredictable, but it is unlikely to remain dormant indefinitely. I suggest proceeding with haste." The ship began its descent through the planet's atmosphere, the icy clouds parting to reveal a vast expanse of frozen tundra below. The terrain was stark and uninviting, with jagged mountains rising in the distance and patches of shimmering ice reflecting the pale sunlight. Drin peered out the viewport, his antennae twitching. "Lovely place. Really screams ancient death trap." Bolt tilted its dome, processing the landscape. "Terran artifacts, highly probable. Exploration, priority." Yeah, Drin muttered, adjusting the controls. "Let's just hope whatever's down there is worth the trouble." As the Wanderer skimmed the surface, the ship's scanners beeped, highlighting a faint energy signature buried deep beneath the ice. Drin frowned, leaning closer to the console. "Seraph, what am I looking at?" Stepped out of the airlock, the biting wind cutting through the barren landscape like a knife. His boots crunched against the ice, the sound unnervingly loud in the vast, silent tundra. Above, the artificial moon hung ominously, its dormant systems giving no indication of activity. "Seraph," Drin muttered, adjusting his helmet's visor against the glare of the planet's faint sun. "What's the reading on this place? Anything useful?" The AI's voice crackled through the helmet comms, dry as ever. "Atmospheric composition is tolerable for humans, though hardly inviting. Surface temperature is -62 degrees. Your suit will hold for approximately 8 hours before requiring a thermal reset." "Great," Drin muttered, scanning the horizon. "Plenty of time to freeze to death if this treasure hunt goes sideways." Beside him, Bolt trundled along on its mismatched wheels, the uneven terrain causing an occasional lurch. The drone emitted a cheerful chirp. "Thermal failure suboptimal. Recommendation: maintain efficiency." Drin snorted. "Thanks for the tip, Bolt. Really helpful." The landscape stretched out endlessly, a barren expanse of glittering frost and jagged ice formations. Mountains loomed in the distance, their peaks shrouded in thin wisps of cloud. The faint hum of the Wanderer's idling engines was the only reminder that they weren't completely alone. Serapha's voice broke the silence. "The energy signature is approximately 1 kilometer north. I recommend proceeding with caution. The terrain appears deceptively stable." Drin started forward, his boots crunching against the frost. "Caution's my middle name, Seraph. I thought it was recklessness," the AI quipped. Bolt chirped as it rolled alongside, occasionally skidding slightly on the icy surface. Terrain stable. Artifacts possible beneath surface. Drin stopped and crouched, running a gloved claw over the frosted ground. Faint geometric patterns were etched into the ice, too precise to be natural. His antennae twitched as a thrill of excitement coursed through him. "Seraph, you seeing this?" he asked, tapping his helmet. The AI scanned through the suit's sensors. Indeed, these patterns are consistent with Terran design, likely decorative markings, or possibly structural schematics buried beneath the surface. "Or treasure maps," Drin said with a grin, standing and brushing the frost off his gloves. "Come on, Bolt. Let's find out where this rabbit hole leads." The trek across the tundra was grueling. Bitter winds whipped against Drin's suit, and the ground beneath his boots occasionally shifted with unsettling cracks. Bolt rolled unevenly behind him, its damaged wheel screeching faintly with every rotation. The drone paused periodically to stabilize itself before lurching forward again. Serapha's voice cut through the comms again. "You're approaching the source of the energy signature, approximately 50 meters ahead." Drin squinted through the visor, his antennae twitching. The ice ahead shimmered faintly, reflecting the sunlight in a way that seemed unnatural. As they drew closer, the shimmering grew more pronounced, resolving into a circular depression in the ground. "Looks like we've found something," Drin muttered, crouching near the edge of the depression. Embedded in the ice was a large, circular hatch, its surface etched with faded Terran glyphs. The symbols were ancient, their meaning long lost, but they radiated an unmistakable air of importance. "Seraph, what do we have here?" "Analyzing," the AI replied. "The glyphs suggest this as a maintenance access point, likely leading to an underground structure. The hatch is sealed, but there appears to be an activation mechanism beneath the frost." Drin reached for a small plasma tool on his belt and began melting away the ice covering the hatch's edges. "Looks like it's time to earn my keep. Bolt, keep watch for anything sneaking up on us." The drone chirped affirmatively, its wheels skidding slightly as it turned in a wide arc to scan the surroundings. As the last of the ice melted, Drin spotted a faintly glowing panel on the hatch's edge. He tapped it experimentally, and a low hum resonated through the ground. "That's either really good or really bad," he muttered. The panel's glow intensified, and the hatch began to creak open with a hiss of pressurized air. A shaft extended downward, its walls lined with frost-covered metal and faintly glowing cables. "Well, team," Drin said, his voice tinged with excitement. "Looks like we've got our way in." Serapha's voice, as dry as ever, responded, "I recommend haste." The energy signature has shifted slightly. Something within the structure may be activating in response to your presence. Drin glanced at Bolt, whose optics flashed nervously. Relax, Bolt. We've made it this far. What's the worst that could happen? As he stepped to the edge of the hatch and peered into the dark, glowing shaft, the faint hum from below grew louder, almost like a distant heartbeat. With a deep breath, Drin tightened his grip on his gear and began the descent into the unknown. The icy tunnels stretched endlessly ahead, the dim glow of Drin's suit lights casting long shadows on the frost-coated walls. Each step echoed faintly, swallowed almost instantly by the oppressive silence. Bolt trundled beside him, its mismatched wheels grinding softly against the uneven floor, while Serapha's voice provided occasional commentary through the comms in his helmet. "This complex is larger than anticipated," Seraph noted, his tone as dry as ever. "The energy readings suggest significant infrastructure buried beneath the surface, likely a combination of monitoring systems and power generators." "Great," Drin muttered, his claws tightening on the grip of his plasma cutter. "The bigger the place, the bigger the treasure, right? Or the bigger the death trap," Seraph quipped. Drin rolled his eyes and pressed on, his antennae twitching with a mixture of unease and excitement. The air grew colder as they descended, the frost on the walls thickening into solid ice. Bolt beeped nervously, its optics flickering as it scanned the passage. "Anomalous readings detected," the drone reported. "Faint power sources ahead." "Good," Drin said, trying to sound confident. "We're getting close." The tunnel opened abruptly into a cavernous chamber, its sheer scale forcing Drin to stop in his tracks. His suit lights swept across the room, revealing a massive central console surrounded by towering columns. The columns were intricately carved, their surfaces adorned with faded Terran glyphs and geometric patterns. Between the columns, large screens hung in fractured silence, their cracked surfaces flickering faintly with static. "Whoa!" Drin breathed, stepping cautiously into the room. "Seraph, you seeing this?" "Indeed," the AI replied, its tone unusually subdued. "This appears to be the control center of the complex. The central console is likely the source of the energy signature we've been tracking." Bolt wheeled forward, its optics focused on the console. Structure operational. Partial systems online. Drin approached the console, brushing away a layer of frost to reveal a surface embedded with glowing circuits. The faint hum of dormant machinery filled the air, vibrating through the floor beneath his boots. "This thing's been sitting here for how long?" he muttered, running a claw over the console's surface. "Based on atmospheric and geological data, at least several millennia," Seraph replied. "It's remarkable that any of its systems remain functional." Drin crouched, inspecting the console more closely. A cluster of buttons and a circular interface glowed faintly, their symbols almost familiar. "So, how do we turn it on without blowing ourselves up?" "Carefully," Seraph said. "There's an access port on the left side. Connect your suit's auxiliary interface. I'll handle the rest." Drin hesitated. "You're sure this won't trigger some ancient security system?" "I'm not in the mood to get vaporized today. I'm confident enough," Seraph replied, his tone annoyingly calm. With a sigh, Drin extended a cable from his suit and connected it to the port. The console hissed faintly, its circuits pulsing with light as Seraph initiated the interface. The room came alive. Screens flickered to life, projecting holographic patterns and fragments of Terran glyphs. A low hum resonated through the chamber, growing steadily louder until it felt like the walls themselves were vibrating. "Now we're talking," Drin said, grinning despite himself. Bolt beeped excitedly, rolling closer to the console. "Systems active. Data streams unstable." "Unstable?" Drin repeated, his grin faltering. The holograms above the console shifted, forming fragmented images of star maps, human figures, and machinery. Voices crackled faintly, speaking in garbled Terran phrases that sent chills down Drin's spine. "Can you make sense of any of this?" he asked, tapping his helmet. "Patience," Seraph replied. "The system is struggling to stabilize. Give me a moment." As Seraph worked, Drin wandered the room, his claws tracing the glyphs on the columns. The carvings told a story he couldn't understand but felt compelled to decipher. Bolt trundled after him, its optics flickering between the holograms and the carvings. "This place feels alive," Drin murmured, "like it's watching us." "The Oracle is partially sentient," Seraph said, his voice sharper now. "It's designed to process and respond to stimuli, though its functionality is degraded over time. Proceed carefully, Drin. This is no ordinary machine." Drin stopped in his tracks, his antennae twitching. "Great. A thinking death trap. Just what I needed." Before Seraph could reply, the hum of the Oracle shifted, and the fragmented holograms began to coalesce into something clearer. A distorted voice echoed through the chamber, speaking words Drin could only partially understand. "Warning, unauthorized access detected. Proceed with caution." Drin exchanged a glance with Bolt, whose optics glowed nervously. "Seraph, tell me this thing isn't about to fry us." "Unlikely," the AI said, though there was a note of uncertainty in its tone. "The Oracle is attempting to communicate. Remain calm." Easier said than done, Drin thought as he turned back toward the console, watching the flickering holograms with equal parts fascination and dread. The chamber pulsed with a faint, rhythmic hum as the Oracle's fragmented holograms stabilized, forming coherent images interspersed with static. Bolt trundled closer to the console, its optics scanning the shifting projections, while Drin stood frozen, transfixed by the sheer scale of what he was witnessing. "Seraph," he muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. "What am I looking at?" The AI's voice crackled through his helmet. "The Oracle's primary systems are coming online. What you're seeing appears to be a partial data reconstruction, likely a combination of historical archives and operational logs." The holograms flickered again, displaying fragmented scenes of a long-lost era. Towering cities gleamed under alien skies, their spires reaching impossibly high. Vast ships, their design sleek and alien even to Drin, sailed through space with a grace that defied understanding. The visuals were accompanied by faint audio, voices speaking in a language Drin couldn't decipher. This is humanity?" Drin asked, his voice filled with awe. "Fragments of it," Seraph confirmed. "Their history, their achievements. But note the degradation. This data is incomplete, corrupted over time." Bolt beeped, its optics zooming in on the star maps that materialized amidst the shifting images. Data patterns repeating. Star systems highlighted. The map stabilized briefly, revealing a galaxy-spanning grid with 10 glowing markers scattered across its breadth. Each marker pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat, drawing Drin's attention. "What are those?" he asked, pointing at the markers. Seraph's tone grew sharper. "Artifact locations. Each marker represents a site associated with Terran relics or technologies. If these coordinates are accurate, they could lead to answers or immense danger." Drin's antennae twitched with excitement. "Danger, treasure. It's all the same to me. We need those locations." The Oracle's voice crackled to life, interrupting the conversation. It spoke in broken sentences, its tone mechanical, yet tinged with something unsettlingly human. "Warning, ascension incomplete. Project isolation initiated. Guardians remain active. Proceed with caution." Drin frowned, turning to Bolt. "Guardians? Seraph, what's it talking about?" "Unclear," the AI admitted. The term could refer to automated defense systems, sentient constructs, or something else entirely. What is certain is that these sites won't be unguarded. The holograms shifted again, this time showing fragmented images of conflict. Human ships battling against shadowy adversaries, cities consumed by fire, and towering machines unleashing destruction. The voice continued, repeating distorted phrases that sent chills down Drin's spine. "Final safeguard, humanity's legacy remains hidden. Unauthorized access triggers protocol." Bolt beeped nervously, its wheels shifting slightly. Protocols, dangerous. Recommendation, proceed cautiously. Drin exhaled, running a claw over the console. Yeah, no kidding. One of the holograms zoomed in on a particular star system, its coordinates glowing brighter than the others. The Oracle's voice grew clearer, as if directing them specifically. Primary location priority 1. Access restricted. Warning, approach at own risk. Seraph processed the data, its voice cutting through the tension. That system is deep within uncharted space. The Oracle's emphasis suggests it holds something of critical importance, possibly tied to humanity's downfall. Drin's smirk returned. Critical importance sounds like another word for valuable. I'm in. Your optimism is admirable, Seraph said dryly, if misplaced. The room darkened slightly as the Oracle's systems began to wind down, the holograms flickering and fading. Bolt beeped again, nudging the base of the console with one of its wheels. Data unstable. System shutting down. Not yet, Drin said, frantically reconnecting his suit interface. We need more information. The console emitted a low groan, the lights dimming further. The Oracle's voice echoed one last time, its tone tinged with finality. Warning, access logged. Proceed with caution. Guardians will awaken. The central console powered down completely, plunging the room into an eerie silence. Only the faint hum of residual energy remained, like the last breath of a slumbering giant. Drin straightened, his claws resting on his hips as he surveyed the now dormant Oracle. Well, that was ominous. Understatement, Seraph remarked. We now have 10 potential artifact sites, all likely guarded by advanced defenses. And if the Oracle's warnings are accurate, something or someone is aware of our presence. Bolt chirped nervously, its optics flashing in irregular patterns. Awareness confirmed. Mission, high risk. Drin grinned, his antennae twitching with excitement. High risk, high reward. You know me, Seraph. This is exactly my kind of job. The AI side, or at least its equivalent. Then I suggest we leave before the so-called Guardians arrive. Whatever they are, I doubt they'll appreciate our intrusion. Drin nodded, grabbing his gear and motioning for Bolt to follow. As they ascended the way they'd come, his mind raced with possibilities. Humanity's legacy, treasure, danger. It was all laid out before him, waiting to be uncovered. But as the Oracle's final warning echoed in his mind, a flicker of doubt crept into his thoughts. Guardians remain. Let's hope they like visitors, Drin muttered as the tunnel swallowed them in darkness. Drin emerged from the shaft, his boots crunching onto the icy surface of the tundra. He inhaled deeply, the freezing air within his helmet doing little to ease his nerves. Behind him, Bolt wheeled out awkwardly, its mismatched wheels struggling for traction on the frost-slick ground. That wasn't so bad, Drin said, trying to keep his tone light as he glanced up at the artificial moon hanging ominously in the sky. In and out without a hitch. Easy job. Serapha's voice crackled through his helmet comms, heavy with sarcasm. Easy? You've activated an ancient Terran system, accessed restricted data, and triggered multiple warnings. By all accounts, this is the opposite of easy. Details, Drin muttered, adjusting the straps on his gear. Anyway, we got what we came for. Let's get back to the ship before something decides to. A low rumble interrupted him, reverberating through the frozen ground. Drin froze, his antennae twitching wildly. Bolt beeped nervously, its optics swiveling toward the sky. Seraph, Drin said slowly. What was that? The AI's response was clipped. The moon. It's powering up. Drin looked up just in time to see the artificial satellite come alive. Pulses of light rippled across its surface, illuminating faintly visible weapon ports that had been dormant moments ago. Beams of light swept across the tundra, their paths deliberate and methodical. Unauthorized access confirmed, a booming mechanical voice announced, echoing across the landscape. Defensive protocols initiated. Drin cursed under his breath. That's not good. Bolt chirped in agreement. Defensive protocols, dangerous. Immediate departure, recommended. Yeah, no kidding, Drin snapped, breaking into a run. Seraph, fire up the Wanderer and get over here. We're gonna need a pickup. There was a brief pause before Seraph replied, his tone begrudging. Initiating remote startup. Estimated arrival in 3 minutes. Provided, of course, that you survive that long. Not helping, Drin shouted, leaping over a widening crack in the ice. Behind him, Bolt struggled to keep pace, its wheels skidding on the uneven ground. The rumbling intensified as beams of light swept closer, followed by a deafening explosion in the distance. Shards of ice and debris rained down, forcing Drin to shield his face. He glanced back to see a large chunk of the tundra collapse into a sinkhole. Seraph, he shouted, his breath fogging the inside of his helmet. How close are you? The Wanderer is en route, though I should note that your location is rapidly becoming less hospitable. Drin skidded to a stop, turning to see Bolt struggling over a patch of jagged ice. Come on, Bolt. Don't fall behind now. Mobility impaired, Bolt chirped, its optics flickering. Ice suboptimal for wheels. Yeah, I noticed, Drin muttered, running back to grab the drone. With a grunt, he hoisted Bolt over his shoulder and started sprinting toward the clearing Seraph had indicated for pickup. The ground beneath them shook violently, another explosion tearing through the air. Drin stumbled but kept moving, his pulse racing as the moon's weaponry locked onto their position. I strongly recommend you increase your speed, Seraph said, his voice calm despite the chaos. The moon's targeting algorithms are adjusting. Do I look like I'm taking a leisurely stroll? Drin growled, his legs burning as he pushed himself harder. He spotted the faint silhouette of the Wanderer descending through the icy haze, its landing lights cutting through the gloom. The Wanderer hovered briefly before touching down, its ramp extending with a mechanical hiss. Drin sprinted up the incline as another beam of energy scorched the ground behind him, sending shards of ice pelting against the ship's hull. Get us out of here, Seraph, Drin barked, collapsing into the pilot's chair. Bolt rolled off his shoulder and onto the floor with a clatter, its optics spinning wildly. Engines engaged, Seraph replied. And might I add, your timing is impeccable. Another moment, and you'd have been vaporized. The Wanderer roared to life, its engines propelling it skyward as the moon's weapons recalibrated. Explosions rained down around them, each blast sending shockwaves that threatened to knock the ship off course. Drin gripped the controls tightly, sweat dripping down his face. Those artifact locations better be worth it, he muttered. Given your penchant for survival, Seraph said, I'm sure you'll find a way to make them so. For now, try not to get us all killed. The Wanderer shot forward, leaving the collapsing tundra and deadly moon behind as Drin prepared for the most daring part of their escape. The Wanderer screamed through the icy atmosphere, its engines blazing against the frigid winds. Drin's claws gripped the controls so tightly his knuckles ached, his antennae twitching with each rumble of the ship's frame. Behind him, Bolt skidded across the floor with every sharp turn, chirping nervously. Seraph, Drin barked, his voice strained. Tell me we're out of range. Not even close, Seraph replied, his tone maddeningly calm. The moon's targeting systems are locked onto us. Its weaponry is designed for precision tracking. Evasion will require. Yeah, Drin interrupted, cutting sharply to the left as a beam of light slashed through the air where the ship had been moments before. Evasion. I've got it covered. The moon loomed in the rear sensors, its surface pulsing with ominous energy. Beams of plasma shot from its weapon ports, each narrowly missing the Wanderer as Drin weaved through the sky. The ship's warning alarms blared incessantly, their shrill tones adding to the chaos. Recommendation, Seraph said, unfazed by the cacophony. Use the planet's terrain to your advantage. The moon's targeting algorithms may struggle with line-of-sight interference. Terrain? Drin snapped. We just left the planet. You want me to head back down there? Yes, Seraph said simply. Drin growled, his claws dancing across the controls. You're lucky I trust you, Seraph. Mostly, he angled the Wanderer downward, skimming the upper atmosphere as the planet's icy surface came back into view. The ship plunged toward the frozen terrain, its engines roaring against the sudden gravitational pull. Below, jagged cliffs and towering ice formations stretched like a labyrinth of natural defenses. Brace yourself, Bolt. Drin shouted over the din. Brace for what? Bolt chirped, its optics flickering nervously. Just don't explode. The Wanderer leveled out mere meters above the ice, its engines kicking up a storm of frost and debris. Drin guided the ship through narrow passes and over frozen ridges, the moon's weaponry firing relentlessly behind them. Each blast shook the ship, sending warning lights flashing across the console. Seraph, where's my exit? Drin demanded, sweat dripping down his temple. Analyzing, Seraph replied. There's a natural tunnel system ahead. If you maneuver through it successfully, Drin cut in. You mean when I maneuver through it successfully? Confidence noted, Seraph said dryly. The tunnel system loomed ahead, its jagged entrance barely wide enough to accommodate the ship's wingspan. Drin gritted his teeth, angling the Wanderer downward as the moon's beams scorched the ground behind him. Here goes nothing, he muttered. The ship plunged into the tunnel, its frame scraping against the icy walls with a deafening screech. Inside, the narrow passage twisted unpredictably, forcing Drin to rely on split-second reflexes to avoid crashing. Structural integrity declining, Bolt beeped anxiously, its dome swiveling toward a panel that was sparking wildly. No kidding, Drin shouted, yanking the controls to avoid a jagged outcropping. Warning, Seraph said. The moon's targeting systems are compensating. You need to leave the tunnel before it collapses entirely. Working on it. The tunnel opened into a wide, frozen canyon, the sky above glowing faintly as the moon's beams continued their relentless pursuit. Drin pushed the engines to their limit, the ship's frame groaning under the strain. Seraph, he yelled, tell me we've got something, anything, to shake this thing off. Deploying decoy flares, Seraph replied. The Wanderer launched a series of bright, glowing flares that streaked upward, their heat signatures mimicking the ship's engines. For a moment, the moon's weaponry hesitated, its beams shifting to track the decoys. Did it work? Drin asked, his voice breathless. Temporarily, Seraph said, but the decoys will only delay the inevitable. I recommend executing an escape trajectory immediately. Drin nodded, his antennae twitching with determination. He angled the ship sharply upward, using the canyon's walls to shield their ascent. The moon's beams resumed their pursuit, but the delay was enough to give the Wanderer a head start. The ship broke through the planet's upper atmosphere, its engines blazing as it rocketed toward open space. Behind them, the moon's weaponry continued to fire, its beams growing fainter as the distance increased. We're clear, Seraph announced after a tense silence. For now. Drin slumped back in his seat, exhaling heavily. That was way too close. Agreed, Seraph said. Though your improvisational piloting was adequate. Bolt beeped, its optics flickering in relief. Survival achieved. Captain skillful? Drin grinned weakly. Skillful, Bolt. Let's go with that. The Wanderer stabilized as the moon faded into the distance, its faint glow a reminder of the danger they'd escaped. Drin stared out the viewport, his thoughts drifting to the data Seraph had secured, the 10 locations that could hold the answers to humanity's greatest mystery. Well, he said, his voice steady despite the adrenaline still coursing through him, that's one hell of a start. With a flick of the controls, the Wanderer shot into the void, leaving the icy world and its deadly moon behind. Their journey was only beginning.